all had changed into the murder cult's hideout.
I've got my buddy Chris here to talk about Alan Wake 2. We both completed the game, and I think we came away fairly impressed. This video is going to be a spoiler review discussion, so if you have not beaten Alan Wake 2, it is best not to watch this video. So to kick things off, I want to talk about the negatives of Alan Wake 2, if there are any. Chris, do you have any negatives for this game?
No, not really.
None at the top of your head.
Nothing really off the top of my head. It's one of those things where, you'd really got to think about it. To me, right? It had everything that I wanted in a game. So,
I think for me, it was just kind of the inventory system, right? Was a bit finicky, especially in like the more when you were getting into the more difficult sections for the game, and it was like combat heavy, and then you were trying to like navigate with the inventory system, right? The quick switches and stuff like that. I thought that was probably like my only real downside, and then the over reliance on jump scares. I thought the game was creepy enough, and I thought the game did a really, really good job of kind of having that sustained tension. But then there were far too many times where I felt like you're wandering down a hallway or you're going down a corridor, and it's like jump scare. It just kept doing it, and I was like, God damn it, stop, please.
yeah, you know what? I did just think of something. The issue that I had were particular sequences, especially once you hit Parliament, right? And you're going through Alan's old apartment. It is very clear that nothing is going to happen because you don't have a gun drawn. So that kind of released the tension from those.
Yeah,
those
that's also true. I noticed that. I think the second time because the first time you go into Parliament, I was like, oh, this is just amazing looking. This is incredible. And then the second time I was like, oh, I don't have a gun here, so I'm safe-ish, unless they want to do like some they want to jump immediately to a cutscene or something. But all right, I was surprised that you didn't have any real negatives. I was kind of shocked because I remember we were watching you play through the the section on the beach. You're like, by God damn inventory, I don't want to switch.
Honestly, that was user error.
Yeah, that was you.
I was just getting frustrated.
I thought it was hilarious. All right, well, that's really my only two negatives for the game. I think some people might probably have a problem with the cliffhanger ending, but I don't necessarily see it as a problem because I'm fairly certain that Remedy is going to probably go from Max Payne to Control 2 to Alan Wake 3. So, and they also answered a bunch of questions in this game, and we'll get to that part.
And created a bunch.
And created a bunch of them too. So, with the negative stuff out of the way, let's talk about what we enjoyed. I think we should really start with the standout moment. For myself, it's the Champion of the Light. I can't remember what chapter it was. I think it's the second big section for Alan. And so I have played Control. I told you about this. And this is the second time Remedy, I think, has collaborated with Poets of the Fall. And it's called the Ashtray Maze. So basically, you're going through this section. You meet Ati again. And pretty much to get to this section, you have to get Ati's headset. And it's something he carries on with him when you first meet him in Control. And when you get it, you have to fight through this small section. And as you're going through, to actually get to the Ashtray Maze, when you're fighting through it, you have to put the music on. And you're playing this amazing song as it's navigating through the maze. So it's actually like helping you navigate. It's like closing all these different sections and shifting all around you. Because basically in the game, what happens is that you have a number of areas when you're trying to pretty much control, like they're called the hiss in the game, right? When you're controlling these sections, Jessie touches the ground and then she shifts the environment around her. But it's like a cutscene, right? And this is like live action the entire time for Control. And then for, when we first got into Alan Wake 2, I think I told you, I texted you, I said, hey man, you're going to get to this part. I don't know if you're going to love it, but I found this to be the most captivating thing ever. And it was the Champion of the Light, which is just like this, 10-minute section, right? Just about. 10-minute section of you just kind of running around replaying the first game essentially as a stage play. It was a musical. It worked. I'm sorry, it was the most amazing thing I think I've played. I was just completely enamored the entire time. That's my favorite part. Is yours the same thing, or do you have something else?
So, I mean, that's my favorite section of the game. The immersiveness. I mean, you're just sucked in. You can't. I mean, a lot of people say that, right? But like, me, I'm not like a mega gamer. I mean, I game and everything like that, but like, for a game to suck me in like that is rare. And the multimedia transition, your character in a game and then you're seeing live action, was they did it extremely well.
100%.
But as far as like my favorite part,
Yeah.
and you may have to bleep me here, but
No, we're
when
not.
Alan.
None of that. We're not bleeping shit.
All right, so when Alan drives, he takes Sage's car, and
Saga,
drives
sir?
Saga Sage, sorry, Saga's car, right, and drives back to Bright Falls, and he comes across the basically the entrance to the Dark Zone, and he's contemplating like, should I even do this again? And eventually he looks into the camera and he's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And he just walks through. I was like, oh my God, that was chilling, man. That was so awesome.
That was like an epic, thing you saw in like the 2000s from some of those movies, like that cliched moment where they're like going to combat or something like that. And they're like, you know what, man, whatever, and they start fucking going in. Yeah, I found that. When I saw that, I was like, man, that's probably my second favorite scene in the game, because Alan, suffered through so much, and he finally got out. And now, he's taking responsibility for what happened to Alex Casey, and he goes, fuck. And I was like, oh man, what a ballsy dude. Because I don't know if I would actually go back into the place that, it all began there. And on top of that, you're essentially entering back into the dark place, right? So
Time stops.
Yeah, where time stops. You spent 13 years trying to get out, now you're back in. Holy shit. Okay. You mentioned the multimedia experience. Is this the best game to ever do it?
I've thought about it. I was racking my brain all day before we got in here. You got like Resident Evil, right? They tried it in the first one. Like
no,
one, right?
Don't go.
Right. Barry. Yeah, I mean they tried it in that, but this is the only game that I've ever played that made it so seamless, so effortless. It didn't break the immersion at any point.
Yeah,
to me,
very surprising. So you haven't played Control, and I don't think you played Quantum Break, right? So Remedy has been experimenting with this for a long time, and Quantum Break was a game that came on the Xbox One. For those that don't remember, this was a game that was supposedly going to be like a massive Xbox One exclusive, and Remedy was experimenting with having a live action companion piece. So they actually had a show that coincided with it, and they had live action sections, and it really kind of broke immersion at times. It kind of messed up the pace. The actor Sean Ashmore, who played Tim Breaker in Alan Wake 2, he's actually the main character in Quantum Break. And what was interesting was I was like, it's really, I think it's nice. It's ambitious to kind of try to have this multimedia, integration. It didn't work. And then in Control, they kept trying to go with it. And then eventually they had like these, videos that you see. Like I think you saw the book by Dr. Darling. Did you see that in the game in Alan Wake 2?
In Warland Door's dressing room, yeah.
Yeah, so Dr. Darling plays a massive role in Control. He's pretty much like, essentially he didn't discover the AWEs, the Altered World events, but he's very much like the expert on it. And so they have like all these different videos of him in Control, and essentially it's like they were fun, but they're like optional. I haven't seen a game do it to the extent of Alan Wake 2 at all. And
and he showed up in Alan Wake 2 actually, for a little blip. Yeah.
And you were right. Like I don't think there's a game that has done it like Alan Wake. Like other games have probably had like, live action skits, but never so much where it's like it's part of the game. The first thing you do with Alan Wake is essentially go in and watch him have his interview with Mr. Door, and have that surreal conversation where he's like, this isn't real, right? What are we talking about here? I didn't write this book. That type of stuff.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever seen anyone to really try to push as hard as Remedy has. And here's the thing: like, do you want other games to experiment with multimedia, integration? Do you want them to
For-
kind of dive into it as well?
I mean, if Remedy's doing it, sure. I mean, I don't trust a lot of other companies to do that. I mean, to me, what made it mesh so well was that the acting for the characters within the game and the acting for the multimedia sections were similar.
Correct. Yeah.
So it like I said, that's the big reason. That's a big reason why it didn't break the immersion for me. Not to mention, I mean, they kind of leaned into it heavy with this particular game, where they just go, "Let's just fucking be weird,"
Yeah.
and it works.
In a way, it felt like it's really hard at times to kind of classify Alan Wake 2 as a video game, right? It's more like an experience. Like it's super ambitious. It's very weird. And I was telling, I think I told you, I said this is probably one of the games I've played that really embraced the weird. Like Control was like a weird game because it was essentially like a Metroidvania. But Alan Wake 2 is like, they saw what they did in Control, they saw what worked, and they said, "Fuck it, let's kind of dive right in and do more." So I love it. I hope if other companies want to experiment with it, I can see some being really successful. Like I can see Insomniac being really successful because they're great in fucking almost everything they touch. But yeah, I really want now a Resident Evil game that does this.
Yeah,
But-
that would be.
But
I don't
does
know.
but doesn't suck with it. Barry?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm hoping that they do more of that for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the gameplay, right? What is the big change from Alan Wake, in your opinion?
Scenery, for one, it's a lot more cluttered,
Yes, 100%.
harder to see, which adds to the. I mean, especially when Saga first goes into the first overlap with Nightingale, you couldn't see shit, and there's just sounds all around you. I mean, it's part of the reason that I spend so much on a headset is for these particular moments, right?
It's like,
is
give me all that money.
right, and another thing that I noticed was the haptic feedback specifically to the PlayStation controller.
Mhm.
Playing on PlayStation, so originally I was playing on Epic and I was having video problems, so I got it on PlayStation and then I started streaming it from PS Remote Play and noticed that the lack of haptic feedback really kind of degraded the feeling that you felt in certain scenarios.
Right.
The controller vibrations and things like that. I mean, they did a really, really good job of kind of sucking you into those moments.
Yeah.
So
I think it's crazy because they went from essentially like a third-person action adventure game, right, just with supernatural elements, to a full-on survival horror title. And they didn't just like go kind of soft into it. They fully embraced it because with Saga, it's essentially her sections are really your modern survival horror title. And Alan is something I just can't explain because it's more horror than it is survival horror because the shadows themselves just give you so much fucking anxiety, especially coupled with the sound design in this game, which is phenomenal. So
the whispering,
yeah. The whispering.
Wake. Yeah, Alan Wake. You stole my words.
Yeah, I love that. I think that them pushing for a straight survival horror game, I had reservations about, but when I was initially playing Alan Wake, and we talked about this before, we went, you know what, this could be a survival horror game. If you kind of ran it in the way Dead Space ran things instead of Resident Evil, and having the character be too capable at times, like because it's not that they're not capable individuals, but no one's a super soldier. No one's a super agent like Leon Kennedy, right? Like they're not like that. They're just kind of a normal FBI agent who has handgun firearms training, right? And a fucking writer who sometimes went to the range before all this shit had happened. I just love the fact that they really embrace survival horror and they did not dip away from it. And the other thing is, I love the fact that they both had their own Mind Place writer's room, right? And they both differed greatly. Saga was essentially just trying to kind of piece together. It was like a police procedural, I mentioned that in my other video. And then Alan Wake is like, what he says matters. Like, it changes the environment. And the seamlessness of that, to me, like, made the game, like, take another step into being, like, one of my favorite horror titles of all time. I love the fact you're going, it's like, because every time, like, Alex Casey's involved, and I don't remember if you're in the theater and you see all the Alex Casey posters, I fucking love all of them, dude. They have one.
Yeah.
They had one where he's like an alcoholic or some shit, and I was like, that's kind of brutal. Like, why would you mention that? But it's crazy when you go from like a normal, hotel lobby to the site of a suicide cult, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, they don't play about the visuals in this game. So
the torchbearers.
Oh yeah, Jesus,
that shit was messed up.
That shit was brutal. The last thing I remember, something that was comparable to that, was in Spec Ops: The Line, the white phosphorus scene. Yep. That's all I could think about. So well done.
And then you get to the end of the subway train, whatever, and all the voices start coming through, screaming because they're on fire.
Jeez.
Yeah, I was like, Jesus, okay.
What did you think about the shifting perspectives? How do you think Remedy handled that?
I had my reservations, right? When we first learned about it, all I could think was Resident Evil 0, man. And I liked Resident Evil 0, but the switch mechanic just always kind of bugged me. I liked that it was a switch mechanic, but they were completely separate. They didn't necessarily rely on each other, to an extent, right? You could play it any way that you wanted, and what I tended to do was flip-flop, right? I'm like, all right, I'm had enough of these jump scares and getting the piss scared out of me. I'm gonna
having
go
some
do
old lady look at me and talk to me for 5 seconds and then jump scare the shit out of me.
So yeah, I mean that happened in Sagas as well, but nowhere near as much as Alan's.
Yeah.
And Alan, I mean, he just dude's got a messed up mind.
Yeah, dude,
I mean, he has to.
Yeah, what the fuck, dude? It's like, I have to change the plot point. Let's talk about torchbearers. Like, dude, come on, man. People burning on a train. Like,
yeah,
what's wrong
and
with you, dude?
I remember texting you like, dude, this guy's in control of this technically, right? You have Scratch and the Dark Presence and everything like that, but you're in control of this. Like, why not do like Disney World or some shit? Why are you doing this?
Be more like Tiny Tina, bro. Make yourself capable. What the fuck?
Right, and as you learn, it has to be a tragedy.
Correct. Yeah.
And it has to be. He has to match the genre that Scratch initially wrote. So, I don't know why, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the shifting perspectives, like, I think it's very hard. Because basically, I think the first time we kind of played a game with, like, where it really affected the narrative was, like, GTA 5. But, it was more scripted. And here it's like you get to play the character as long as you want until you hit that critical change. And I was interested in seeing like whether or not, as you're moving through the Saga's perspective or Alan's, whether or not you would cause some type of confusion for the player. And they never did. Like, even when they had the moments near the end of like certain sections where Alan and Saga were talking to each other and they were trying to piece together what they were saying, like, you, the player, knew what was happening because you just played that section. But it was interesting to see it from the other character's perspective, because they're both, at that time trying to piece together what's happening, but they can't. And I found the fact that Remedy didn't make it mandatory to constantly switch, right, was something I really enjoyed, because they're like, look, if you're getting tired of playing the Saga, play as Alan. If you're getting tired of playing Alan, play as Saga. And I was like, that's a really good way to work it. And they didn't mess it up at any point in time. Right?
Yeah, and specifically the clicker part. Right?
Yeah.
He starts talking about the clicker, and she at one point says, "I have the clicker," and that could be, that particular scene right there could be immersion breaking. But the way they did it, where they kind of broke up his sentences and things like that, it didn't.
Right.
It wouldn't ruin it.
Yeah, because they really didn't
had
have.
to do that.
Yeah, they really didn't have like a good connection.
Right.
So let's talk about the story, right? So 13 years since Alan Wake. How impressed are you about the way Remedy was able to bridge the gap from the first game?
I'm surprised it didn't take longer.
Yeah.
With how convoluted that shit was. No, I mean, it's
goddamn Kingdom Hearts for adults.
Dude, it was one of the, again, at no point was I like, all right, I'm bored. I'm gonna go play something else. I would stop playing the game purely because I'm like, all right, I have to stop playing this game for right now. And a lot of games don't do that for me, especially like single player titles. It takes a lot for me to sit there and, I mean, I think I played it for, I want to say my total playthrough was like 23, 24 hours. Which, I mean, I told you I took this game slow, and I took it slow.
Yeah, you just wanted to spend time with Rose. I understand.
Absolutely.
Love me some
Any
crazy.
chance I get. Yep.
Love me crazy.
Yeah, no, she was nuts. But in a good way. I mean, she helped you out. So, but yeah, it kept me locked in constantly. And again, I mean, people don't really know me, but that's a rarity for me
The
to do
testament to
something
like writing, because I've seen the single player games you've played at times. I'm like, Chris just plays Assassin's Creed. You know, usually that's what he's known for in our friend group. And they're not known for the greatest stories. But I knew Alan Wake would be interested in you because you do like mysteries and thrillers and horror movies and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what, this might be up your alley. And I just feel like, to me, as like a fan of Alan Wake, I was like, holy shit, they actually answered every question while also raising others. And they really did a good job of just kind of integrating the time off, right? They're like, yeah, it's been 13 years, this has happened, and this has happened. And they kind of they did a great job of showing that like life didn't stop when Alan went away, right? Things were still happening. And I thought that was really interesting. And for whatever reason, Alan's presence is still something that, you know, Bright Falls like heavily talks about. You know, they kept mentioning it, like the author's disappearance, that type of stuff. And I thought it was great. And I love the fact that, you know, once again, Rose, just obsessed with Alan, has like a little shrine to him. It's adorable. You know?
Yep.
She's
Well, then,
apparently
I mean, you
his champion.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in particular between the relationship between Alice and Barry Wheeler.
Yeah. In the
Barry
little
moved
text,
on.
yeah, in the emails, yeah.
Yeah, you know, Barry moved on, and Alice kind of never did, and it's very realistic. And
Well, it's interesting too because
you can see
Barry
that
also
happening.
tried to protect. He worked his ass off to protect Alice too, from like Hollywood and stuff like that, from people who wanted the story about what happened to Alan.
Right, and I actually went back and come to find out, Barry Wheeler had contacts at FBC,
Yep.
Breaker actually, and that's how the whole fence got put into place and the whole thing, like the ritual getting interrupted and all that kind of stuff. Like, so I mean, Barry's kind of at fault for this whole thing.
Bring back Barry in the third game or DLC, just, you know, however you want. What were your impressions on Saga as a character?
I had again, a lot of times games come out and they try to introduce a secondary character into a sequel, and they kind of fall flat. Like either they're not a very good, like you were mentioning Assassin's Creed, right? Basim
Yeah.
was kind of vanilla,
Yeah.
very vanilla. Saga is. It makes sense for a lot of people who go through trauma, and the way she acts, the way she deals with things, and how she views things. It was very realistic.
I think one of my favorite things about her is that she has her professional demeanor. You know, the obviously the Federal Bureau, you know, FBI agent, right? And then, but when she's like in her monologuing, she's like talking shit. So
Oh yeah.
when she was talking shit to Rose, she was like, "What the fuck?" She's crazy. I was like, "This is awesome." I love that, and I like the fact that because I think there was a part of me where I was like kind of in disbelief about, you know, her being related to Tor. And then because I thought, you know, like her, when she was like, is he really family? Mom didn't talk much about like, you know, all that stuff. And then like Tor was like showing pictures and stuff like, dude, no, we're really family. You're really my grandkid. I love the fact that they bridged that gap and then they didn't talk about the father. We're going to get to that near the end of the discussion. But yeah, I love Saga as a character. I love Alex Casey as a character. I think Alex, because it's Sam Lake, he's the writer and director for Alan Wake 2. And he's been such a influential figure for Remedy because he's written all the Max Paynes, Quantum Breaks, all that stuff. That, you know, he was the face of the original Max Payne, right? And that he plays such a crazy role in this. Like the Dark Place version of Alex Casey is just fucked up because it's obviously Alan's character in the novel. And I wondered like why Saga never showed up in the Dark Place for Alan. And I thought it was kind of fucked up too. I don't know how you feel about it. That like when she like confronted Alan about like her, like him writing her into the story, I was like, dude, And I think he
Yeah.
did so he did that because Alex Casey was essentially like they're partners, right? I'm assuming that's why it happened. Is that
So I have a theory about that, right?
Mm.
As you're going to get into about Door, but I'm going to leave that alone for right now, but I believe that he knew Saga existed because of Door.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. What was your what were your thoughts on the reveal that Alan is Scratch?
Kind of obvious, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
I thought, two sides of the same coin, because we always knew from the first one, right? Like, if there's light, there has to be dark, and vice versa.
Right.
And so I always you saw at the end of Alan Wake 1, right, where he non-shaven, or excuse me, completely shaven with short hair and all that stuff, where he kind of looks at himself, and the other person's smiling at him. That's where I kind of was like, okay, this is kind of obvious. It didn't make the reveal any less impactful because they did such a good job of storytelling.
Yeah, it is such a
And
good job of acting it out too. Like Alan kind of coming to the realization, especially when they had the Alice scene, which by the way, that's probably one of my favorite moments in the story, where Alice had revealed that like it was pretty much Alan the entire time showing up.
mhm,
And then obviously the false suicide, which was like one of the craziest sequences. I heard your reaction to it. Like, I was like,
yeah,
holy shit. That was a big moment. And the fact that the most impactful thing about it was that Remedy went from like, they had that the photographs as she was walking off that. I was like, dude, what the fuck? Such a dark moment. And I love the fact that, we were building up to like you kind of, I think everyone kind of knew that Alan was Scratch. And then
mhm,
they just kept building it, and you had Alan who was denying it, saying that Scratch is coming, he's here, he's a bad guy. When we got to that point where the brothers were in the cell with you, right? When we were in the jail in the holding area with
mhm.
Saga, and they're like, no, 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 like we need to kill this fucking dude. And we're like, what are you guys talking about? Like Alan seems pretty normal. And then like
He's
he immediately turns into Scratch. I was like, oh shit.
I've been waiting for you, motherfucker.
Yeah, I was like, that was that was such a well crafted scene. I just felt like this is probably one of the most interesting survival horror narratives. Like it's so nuanced, and there's so many great details. Like if you, I feel like I have to replay the game to kind of catch certain things, but I feel like this is probably my favorite survival horror narrative in regards to just like how impactful everything is and how well acted it is. It's just like it's a testament to the writers for Alan Wake.
Yeah, at no point did I sit there and go, well, that's useless information. Moving on.
we,
So,
dude, I'll tell you my the saddest part for me was the final live action video of the brothers where Oh Boy's by himself and he's looking over to Yako and it's just Yako's shadow.
yeah.
That is the saddest shit. I was like, no, dude, that was tragic when it kept happening because like it felt like you're in the dark place, but every time Yako looked over, and then just like it's like he didn't realize it was happening. He was just going along with it, right? But you could sense that, or you could see that sadness in his face. That was so well done, so good, loved it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was getting at with like they do as far as their storytelling, right? They take emotions and what people feel and kind of bring them to life. In the case of Yako, right, it was grief,
Yeah,
right? Not accepting that his brother's gone type thing. You know, same thing with Saga with Logan, right? Her daughter, not accepting it because no, that can't be true. I mean, that's why she has the fact versus fiction board and
yeah.
all that stuff.
That
So
was
it gets
brutal,
convoluted.
by the way. Every time they're like, "Nah, she's dead because of you. You fucked up." And I was like,
Oh, yeah,
good.
with the in the mind place
Yeah,
with Scratch. Yeah.
yeah, that was messed up, man. I was like, "Oh my god, Jesus."
Yeah, it's your fault. It's your fault. And they make you keep posting Logan drowned
Yeah,
as
like
pictures.
I was like, dude, all right, chill,
Yeah.
Remedy. All right, we don't need to drag. We don't need to be that mean. We got to drag that on, Lord. Okay, so I want to talk about some theories that we have, and I'm pretty sure the most obvious one I think is Mr. Door is Sokka's dad, right?
Hmm.
We kind of nailed that, and it was interesting because like the time when Mr. Door got really angry with Alan in like the final section when they're having that conversation, he's like, "You brought somebody into this that I care about." So,
Yep.
but like I don't, and I also love the fact that Tim Breaker, man, poor dude.
Yeah.
I
Best detective in the game, man.
here's what I want. I want Tim Breaker DLC, and I want his sister Sarah to come back because she was the FBI agent or the police officer from the first one, the sheriff from the first game, because she's an FBI agent now, I think. I want her to come back, and I want them to have shifting perspectives between those two.
The
Dude, I just have to ask the question: How did Tim keep his sanity the entire time? Every time he was just humming, right? I thought that eventually he'd lose his mind, but what he wrote on the board was like affirmations to make sure that he wasn't losing his mind.
So I kind of cheated and I watched a video on this, right? In particular with Tim Breaker, right? So there's two things, right? So when he hums, he's actually humming the theme song to Night Springs.
Oh shit! I didn't catch that.
Yeah. The other part is that a lot of people have a theory that he was actually in Quantum Break.
Yeah, so
And that's actually him.
So I listen. I like Remedy had people had asked because essentially it's confirmed that Control and Alan Wake share the same universe, and I think they said someone had asked, is Quantum Break the same thing? And I think they said no, but the way they treated Tim Breaker's character makes it feel like yes, it is, right? And yeah, I think but still, the whole Mr. Door thing being Saga's dad. I mean, once Tor talked about him, I was like, oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
So it does explain why Saga has those powers, right? Why she's so gifted like that. But man, Mr. Door is like the biggest enigma, and I'm kind of hoping he becomes a central figure, not in the DLC, but a central figure in like Alan Wake 3.
Yeah. So he was actually mentioned in Control.
Right.
And he was essentially an interdimensional being that can be in all dimensions at once, and that's where things get really confusing. And that's why, because if Saga, right, is his daughter, that explains why she's able to kind of freely move around the dark zone,
Right.
opening doors like the construction yard. One of the things that they said was he opened the door to the construction yard, and it became what he wanted it to be. Saga was able to do the same exact thing.
That's true.
And that's how she was able to get there,
Yeah.
to where she needed to be.
What did you think about Ati? Because you didn't see him in Control, but he essentially meets Jesse Faden, the main character, as the janitor, and basically Ati, I think in Finnish, it's a god. And what's super funny about Ati is that like at the end of Control, when you're getting to the ashtray maze, that's the last time you talk to him. He's like, I have to go on vacation, and he literally if you read some of the stuff around, it actually says he's going to Watery. I'm like, why the fuck would you want to go there? I think it's because he anticipated that Alan Wake was coming back.
So not only that, but Saga as well, the hero of the story.
Right.
So they actually talk about, just real quick, going back to Warland Door, right? In that Warland Door went missing in the 80s. I think it was 88 or something like that. The actual person, Warland Door, went missing. And it was said that he was struck by lightning and disappeared, which Tor always carries his hammer, which is grandfather of Saga, father-in-law of Warland Door, and they had differences.
They had beef.
they had major beef, but
not like each other.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of hints, and by the way, the whole thing with Quantum Break, it's owned by a different person, so they can't come out and say.
Oh, okay.
That's why they can't just come out and say it.
Right? I just love the fact that it's all integrated so well, right? To be able to bridge, to take like minor characters and make them major characters in different games is something that like I can only say is a testament to good writing, and that's essentially what Alan Wake 2 is. It's probably one of the best written stories. I also love the fact, and I don't know if you noticed this, is that if you go in the dark place and you actually look at some of the billboards, they shit talk Alan. They talk about his writing, which is fucking hilarious. Yeah. They say you're writing shit. I love that. So do you have a theory for Alan Wake 3 or Control 2? Like, you have a theory moving forward that you desperately want to see? Because remember, it's not an ocean, it's a spiral.
I saw a post. It was like Alan Wake 1, it's not an ocean, it's a lake, or it's not a lake, it's an ocean. It's not a lake, it's an ocean. And then Alan Wake 2 was It's not a loop; it's a spiral. And then Alan Wake 3 is going to be, it's not a door, it's a wall that contains an opening or something like that.
It contains a crack in the wall.
Right. Yeah, because they just, I'm hoping that it doesn't end on that same type of cliffhanger. I mean, if really, I don't want to.
So I'm
I
gonna
don't
spoil
want them.
something for you. In Control, there's a thing. So you have the light switch, right?
Mhm.
And it's called the Rule of Three, and it takes you to the Ocean View Motel, right? Which is great because that came up in Alan Wake also.
Right.
And pretty much when you're walking through this puzzle, you have to hit the bell 3 times to actually get to the third door to shift stuff around to solve like certain puzzles and stuff like that. I wonder if Alan Wake 3 or Control 2, whatever, like is kind of is really that final, the finale for this series or this connection or something like that. I feel like it's going to be like that. I feel like Alan Wake 3 is probably going to end like be definitive ish because Control 2 will probably continue Jesse Faden's story and talk about like the things happening within the multiverse, like other AWEs. But Alan Wake 3 should include Door, or it's probably gonna have something. Like, I hope Door shows up in Control 2 because he is this interdimensional being. But yeah, I fully expect like Alan Wake 3 to kind of be the final because of the way if they're working through the Rule of 3 like they did in Control, like maybe the third games are like the endings for those games, which would be sad. But I mean, come on now, like
Right. Yeah. I don't want them to
unnecessarily continue the game.
oversaturate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how I see it. They talk about. I mean, you could keep it going, right? Because I talked about this in the first video, because it is kind of a multiverse. In that, in one, they were actually talking about it. Alan Wake is a writer, but in this one, he's actually Casey, and he's a hardened detective. Like, I mean, you could do whatever you wanted, or
Correct. Yeah.
he's, it's a story about a story.
Yeah. It's a novel and it's meta, right? You don't got to think too much about it.
So I hope they kill it after the next one. I do anticipate that there would be a third one. I'll see you guys in 2036.
Yeah, I know. See you guys in 13 years, boys. be all this shit.
Yeah.
Let's get some closing thoughts on Alan Wake 2. Look, we don't do review scores on our channel. Chris, you should know that by now.
Right.
What? And I need to know because like you kind of hinted at it before when we were texting. Is this your game of the year?
I think so. And that's after getting the platinum in Spider-Man 2, which was also fantastic. Because it had, like I said, it had everything I wanted. It had survival horror. It had, and I said this in the first video, I wanted those suspenseful moments, the tension, right? Where there's no music. It's just you and the crunching of your feet on the woods, or the bed of the woods. It had awesome music. Some of the best music I've heard in a long time.
Exactly.
The story was impactful at all moments, and the characters were likable.
Yeah.
And unlikable at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny, scary,
Weird.
fun, weird.
Weird as shit, right?
I mean, it to me, it checked all of my boxes.
It's gonna contradict with a podcast episode we did where I said like Baldur's Gate 3 was my game of the year, but like I don't know why after playing Alan Wake 2, like I understand like my attachment to BG3 was like mostly because it's like the perfect RPG, but Alan Wake 2 was like 13 years of anticipation, and then they embraced that kind of weird identity that they had been building for so long that they've kind of touched upon it, they danced around it, and then they just said fuck it, we're fully diving in with it. Made one of my favorite survival horror titles, like original survival horror titles in a long time. And in my opinion, stand alone as like it stands alone as the only game that I've played that as a multimedia experience, I think it's not, it goes far beyond what I wanted from a game. Like I think this is an experience to me. Like this is like movie, TV series, whatever you want to call it. This is an experience, and I feel like Alan Wake 2 is just, for me, Yeah, it became my game of the year. The moment I started to like get really involved and engrossed in everything that was happening, I was just hooked. And I think that yeah, I want to play it again. just because I feel like it's that good of a game, even with all the jump scares, you know.
Yeah, I told my wife, she's like, was it worth the money? I paid $50 for it. And typically, you go to a movie, what, $20,
Yeah.
right? For 2 hours of entertainment. I mean, I got 23, 24 hours out of this thing. And I told her straight up, I was like, I pay
Also,
100 for this thing.
also $50 was a fucking steal for Alan Wake 2. I'm just throwing that out there.
100%.
100%. All right, so that's going to do it for this video. Chris, thanks for coming on again. We'll probably do a review discussion or something on Spider-Man 2 because I do have a video. I have all the footage for it. I just need to make a video for it. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Who is it? Was it Eric or something like that? Who was like, he likes your voice. So whoever's a fan of Chris's voice, if you want more videos of Chris,
Kevin.
yeah, Kevin. If you're a fan of Chris's voice, you know what? I mean, we're gonna do more gameplay videos with him. We'll probably do more discussions. Probably try to get you on the podcast. But thanks for coming on, man. Any closing thoughts?
Just waiting for the DLC.
Same here. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.
I chose to come back to the dark place. That is why I put on this exhibition. I had to mislead you, so that I could get you to where you needed to be. The only way out of your loop is destruction or ascension, light or dark. And we've covered the destruction part many times over. And we're getting to the ascension bit by bit. Time means nothing here. You'll still need to go through the loop. But I will keep showing you the images you need to see, the light you need to see, until you're ready. Ellen, I think we're getting close.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.